Born Before 64 is a TV show that asks the vital question, what will we do for the rest of our lives? Kathryn Raaker hosts a show for baby boomers and above, inviting real people to tell real stories about overcoming issues, about facing with courage and triumph the significant obstacles many of us face every day. Born Before 64 TV shows will cover topics that this generation is interested in. So let's join Kathryn Raaker for Born Before 64.
Hi, I'm Kathryn Raaker of Born Before 64, and I have a wonderful guest who was born before 64, and his name is Ed Linz. He happens to be my cousin, an author, former commander of a submarine, and actually a coach for cross country,
yes,
and track, and also a physics and math teacher.
Yes.
I want to welcome you back.
Well, thank you, Kathryn.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And you have a new book out. You've got 3 books, and I want to know, how are you, Ed?
Well, surprising that you asked me, but my standard line is, I woke up this morning.
You woke up this morning. What does that mean?
Well, I didn't always wake up. I was very, very, very close to death back in the early 90s.
Really?
I had a very rare condition called cardiac sarcoidosis, very unusual disease, and it affects your heart. And I came that close to dying.
You know, and it's amazing because our family history, if you know that or not, our family history is heart problems.
Yes.
And my grandfather, who was your uncle, actually had 6 heart attacks.
Oh my gosh.
And actually my brother had a 6-way bypass. So the Linzes must be having a problem with their hearts, right?
Well, I don't know. I did not have any of the traditional heart problems. My disease was this very rare condition called sarcoidosis. It normally affects black women in the South. I looked in the mirror and
you don't look black to me.
Well, not at the moment, but who knows what our real skeletons are, Kathryn.
Right, that's true.
But the symptoms include an arrhythmia of the heart,
right,
and a rapid heartbeat. And when I was diagnosed, I had no symptoms, none. And I talk about this extensively in our book, Life Row, which was published in '97. I started to develop the conditions later in 1991. And
you were out of the military by this time, correct?
I was. I retired from the submarine force in 1985. I had spent 20 years in submarines. I had command of a nuclear ballistic missile submarine, USS Kamehameha.
Now, is that Hawaiian?
That is. All the submarines at that time that were ballistic missile submarines were named after famous Americans, beginning with the first one, USS George Washington. But pretty soon we started to run out of the more traditional famous Americans, and we ended up naming this submarine after the most famous American in Hawaii, Kamehameha, the King Kamehameha. So I had command of that ship in the early 80s, 1980s, and then I ended up with my final assignment being in the Pentagon, and I decided to retire so I could periodically see my family.
Yeah, because, you know, when you're in the Navy, you're typically how long out to sea?
Well, on those submarines at the time. Now remember, this was during the height of the Cold War.
True.
When you remember all the various movies about that Hunt for Red October?
Right.
And we would be the hunted ship by the Russians. Although in earlier assignments, I was on our fast attack submarines, which were hunting the Russians. So it was spy, counter-spy sort of stuff. Very dangerous work, actually.
And how long were you underwater most of the time?
The longest I was ever submerged at one time was 72 days, about 2.5 months.
Wow. And what does that feel like?
It's more comfortable than being in the studio.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, I mean, I used to describe it in somewhat tongue-in-cheek as the ultimate boys' night out.
Really?
Yes, because you're out with people who knew what they were doing. It was dangerous work. It was a total guy thing. Now they have women on the submarines, and
right?
so I do not know how that goes. But at the time, I enjoyed it thoroughly. But you're gone all the time, and it's very, very difficult for your families
I can
back
imagine.
home. Very difficult.
So,
And dangerous work, too.
And dangerous work as well, because you never knew if you were going to come home or not.
The danger was, well, you know, we lost two submarines, the Thresher and the Scorpion. And God bless their souls, but those fellows are lying at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Both of them. Both of these accidents occurred in the Atlantic.
Wow.
But
you knew Rickenbacker, didn't you?
it wasn't Rickenbacker, it was Rickover.
Rickover.
Admiral Rickover, very famous and, as many of us say, flawed individual.
Really?
Brilliant, but flawed.
Flawed.
Yes.
Was he your commander at the time?
He was in charge of the Navy's nuclear
Fleet?
forces. And he didn't deal with the nuclear weapons, he dealt with the propulsion system. And as I said, a brilliant but flawed individual.
Right.
Who was ultimately fired, partly as a result of a situation involving myself, but I don't have time to tell you that. Maybe another show.
Can we have you on again to talk about that?
Well, I always like to visit my cousin.
I know you do. And you actually went to school here in Kentucky.
I did. I went, as a matter of fact, one of my Covington Latin School classmates is in our audience this evening.
Right.
And Thomas G. Schumacher.
Then you have another friend as well that's a publisher.
I do. I have a fellow wearing the submarine hat over there is my very good friend Aaron Spurway, who is interestingly a publisher, and I hope you'll have both of these fellows on at later dates.
I already promised him I would before the show, but even the funniest thing is that Mr. Schumacher actually met me at Turfway.
Really?
And
at the racetrack?
At the racetrack.
I'm sure you were there, not betting, but were there doing a show.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sure.
I was out on the town.
Right.
And apparently I must have been winning because I was really happy. But
Right.
see, what he didn't know was, Ed, that I bet them all.
Well, that's one way to win.
That's the way to win.
That's the way to win. That's the way to win.
And actually, I just recently did a show on thoroughbreds.
Really?
Yes. And at the new, it used to be River Bend,
Right.
but now it's changed.
River Downs.
River Downs,
Yes.
and it's changed. And I actually went out on an early morning to see all the things in the background, and it was just so exciting. It's one of the things that I've always been not frightened about, but getting on a horse and trotting off, I mean, is something.
It's, if you haven't been on one, it's a real experience because you really are above the ground. The jockeys are some of the bravest athletes that I know.
Right.
They're very strong for their size. And it's very dangerous. Tomorrow we're going to be at Keeneland Racetrack, as a matter of fact.
Are you really?
And we'll be up and close and personal with the horses down there. Tom works as a teller down there. So he gets around.
He gets around. He gets around.
Yeah.
So, you know, the nice thing about you, Ed, is that you, at the ripe age that you are today, you're a year
71,
older.
71 at the moment.
I love the Born Before 64s because they're not retiring.
No.
They're doing things that they really love in life. And when we're going to be going to a break in a minute, but I want you to tell people that you did something pretty exciting just recently.
Recently?
And it was doing the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
Which I've never done before. Love to do that. And you've lost weight, I can see.
I have. I have a way for your viewers to lose weight anytime they want to.
Walking.
A foolproof plan. I would say it goes a little bit beyond walking.
Right.
But we can talk about that
as we come back.
in greater detail. I also want to talk very much about air power and skyball and things like that that are coming up. So we have many things to discuss.
About. So do you have a website, Ed?
I do. It's I write a weekly column also. I don't think you mentioned, called and it's under the pen name Eyes Right. Eyes Right, it's a military command.
Okay.
It's also a play on my Kentucky heritage.
Right.
Because when we were arguing, we'd always say, "Eyes right."
Right. So that's your website?
It is.
Eyesright.com?
No, it's .us. www.eyesright.us.
We'll be right back after these messages with Ed Linz, talking about his wonderful career, his new books, and everything about air power and Skyball. We'll be right back.